Welcome to Deerhound Productions. I'm DaneCat33, and today, we'll be diving into the disturbing character of William Afton. This murderous man is the main antagonist throughout Five Nights at Freddy's, and while early on, he was quite mysterious, later games, books, and movies helped flesh out this monster, giving us a clear understanding of his character and motives. So without further ado, let's dive in. We'll start with Afton's backstory, because I think there's a general misunderstanding of what makes him so evil. Some people believe that William Afton snapped after his son's tragic death, and while I do believe this is a big push towards his later crimes, that isn't what makes him so twisted. The Silver Eyes novel gives us a clear understanding of this, and while these novels take place in a separate universe, it's reasonable to assume that all these characters are still written roughly the same, as a lot of Afton's traits here overlap with the games and movies. Late in the Silver Eyes, a character named Carlton observes Afton and characterizes him. But then there was the other kind of petty tyrant, those who grew spiteful with their small scraps of power. Feeling more and more abused by the year, by family who did not appreciate them, by neighbors who slighted them in imperceptible ways, by a world that left them, somehow, lacking something essential. Before him stood someone who had spent so much of his life fighting like a cornered rat, that he had taken on the mantle of bitter sadism as an integral part of himself. He would strike out against others and revel in their pain, feeling righteously that the world owed him his cruel pleasures. Early in the novel, Charlie also summed up William Afton when he was playing the role of Dave Miller. His inadequacy shone through him like a kind of negative charisma. He would always be shoved to the back of the crowd, always shouted down in an argument, always picked last, forgotten, ignored in favor of those who were simply more vital, more vigorously attached to life. I love how Afton is characterized as a pathetic loser who wants to feel powerful. The games also show him being quite evil right off the bat. In Secret of the Mimic, the earliest game in the timeline, Afton is characterized as a cutthroat businessman. He and his business partner, Henry Emily, destroy the life of their former friend, Edwin Murray, who owns Murray's Costume Manor. They want to acquire all of his company's assets and employees. Afton convinces the admins there to feed him staff information so he can poach them all. Once he and Henry have broken down Edwin and his business, Afton offers to buy the whole MCM catalog and keep him on as a lead engineer, all under the guise of trying to help his friend out. So clearly, Afton has always been a bad apple, even before his son's demise. He's simply a petty man who wants to feel strong. In later depictions of Springtrap, we see this almost desperate need for others to fear him.
You will fear me. Suffer now, like all who have stood before me. Scream louder, please. I love the smell of fear.
In Dead by Daylight, when you spawn in as Movie Afton, you can even see him clutching at a springlock wound before hunting down the survivors, seemingly concealing just how weak he really is. Afton tries to seem powerful in the Fazbear's Frights books as well. He forms a big bad trash rabbit and has a massive battle with a character named Detective Larson. But despite that, his soul is barely clinging on to reality, and he's just trying to act stronger than he really is. Diving back into Afton's time as a living man, an overlooked part of his character is that he's not some deranged, creepy guy. He actually just appears to be a normal dude to the public. In the Silver Eyes, the chief of police, Clay Burke, discusses the Freddy's investigation. According to him, everyone immediately suspected that Henry was guilty of the murders. He was a withdrawn, shadowy man, and upon being questioned, he sounded like he was lying. Meanwhile, Afton seemed normal. Unlike Henry, he was robust and lively. And as I previously discussed, he was the businessman behind Freddy's, while Henry was the artist who always seemed to be in another world. Afton is further described as a hefty man who had the ruddy geniality of a financially shrewd Santa Claus. In the books and games, he owns his own company too, that being Afton Robotics LLC, which was responsible for the Circus Baby establishments. More on that later, but my point is that Afton's normal behavior initially allowed him to avoid detection. And I think that is a great character choice to have him be a seemingly average man, rather than some obvious creep. Hiding in plain sight is a recurring trend for Afton throughout the books and movies, where he goes under the aliases of Dave Miller and Steve Raglan. That being said, he's not the most stealthy. Clay and the entire police department know he killed the kids at Freddy's. He was present for each abduction and mysteriously vanished when each murder occurred. FNAF 1 also says that he was charged with his crimes back in 1985, but I'm pretty sure that was retconned, considering we see him running around 2 years later in FNAF 2. Afton's carelessness aside, he was smart enough to hide his victims' bodies in the animatronics. and with no evidence of his crimes, he gets away with them. Speaking of murders, let's focus more on those. As I'm sure we all know, William Afton killed a bunch of kids at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And a big reason that he was able to get so many victims was that he presented himself in such a trustworthy way. William dressed up in the Spring Bonnie costume, appearing friendly to gain the children's trust. In Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria simulator, we see how Afton managed to abduct Susie, the girl who haunts Chica. The fourth closet also depicts this event, and by putting both of these together, we learn that Susie's dog was hit by a car and killed. William Afton somehow learned of this, maybe he ran over the dog himself, but regardless, he told Susie that her dog wasn't dead and to follow him to her pet. Of course, he instead killed her. Later in Help Wanted, there's a digital recreation of when he murdered Gabriel, who went on to possess Freddy. Here, we similarly see Afton gaining his trust, or we at least read about it. There are all sorts of graffiti throughout the level, and next to the yellow rabbit plushies, it reads, "Do you trust me?" These murders help show us how William gains children's trust rather than just outright abducting them. In The Silver Eyes, we read about how Afton's yellow rabbit persona is very trustworthy. When he speaks with the mask on, his demeanor changes. The voice came from inside the mask, but it was not Dave's, not the pitiful, sour tone they would have recognized. The voice of the rabbit was smooth and rich, almost musical. It was confident, somehow reassuring, a voice that might convince you of almost anything. Afton further harnesses that benevolent image to deceive his victims even after death. In both the movie and books, we see that the ghosts have some sort of amnesia. To quote Afton in The Silver Eyes, they don't remember. They've forgotten, the dead do forget. This is also depicted in the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, Alone Together, where a boy named Travis forgets how he died, or even that he is dead. Afton takes advantage of this ghost amnesia and uses drawings to control the children's spirits, making them see him as a friendly yellow rabbit. To quote him from The Fourth Closet, "But they still trust me. They don't see me as I am now, they only remember me as I was, you see." In this book, he controls their remnant, which are the shattered parts of their souls scattered throughout Afton's fun-time animatronics. They think William is their friend Bonnie, thanks to a picture in the spirit world depicting the yellow rabbit standing with the children. Afton elaborates on Remnant more. If you keep all this at just the right temperature, it's malleable, it's moldable, and it's highly, highly effective. Or maybe contagious is the right word. I suspect you could put it into anything, but it's best to put it into something that you can control, at least to a certain extent. You can make something that you control completely, but has no will of its own, like a gun, I suppose. Or you can take a drop of pixie dust, and you can create a monster that you mostly control. One with unlimited potential. So like most things in Afton's life, he wants control over whatever he makes with the children's remnant. However, Carlton snaps them out of this by drawing the yellow rabbit drenched in blood, helping them remember what really happened. This leads them rebelling and killing Afton. In the movie, the drawing is literally a drawing in Freddy's. And similar to Carlton, Abby draws a picture of Afton's crimes, leading to the animatronics spring-locking him. What we can gather from this is that Afton treats his victims like his family. In The Silver Eyes, when Charlie and Co are interrogating him about the children, he says, "They are home, with me, their happiest day." He goes on to claim that there isn't a way out anymore, all that's left is family. Then in the movie, he calls the animatronics little ones and commands them during the final act. When they disobey him, he screams that he made them. Clearly, Afton sees the Freddy's characters haunted by his victims as a family, possibly because he's so disappointed in his own. William is very much depicted as a horrible father throughout the series. In The Fourth Closet, Circus Baby shows Charlie a memory from Elizabeth Afton, William's daughter, who merged with Baby. In this scene, Elizabeth holds a paper with glowing words from her kindergarten teacher and a shiny star. Someone, likely her mother, encourages her to run into her father's workshop and show it to him. Instead, he repeatedly pushes her away and eventually shoves her to the floor. Her precious paper ends up under his foot, and when Elizabeth tries to pry it away, he hits her, then simply turns back to working on Circus Baby. This scene very clearly depicts Afton as an abusive and neglectful father. Elizabeth enforces this by saying his love went to Circus Baby rather than his real daughter. "I wanted so desperately to have been the one on that stage, but it was always her. All of his love went into her. Even after this, embodying the one thing father did love, I'm not enough." So not only is Afton abusive, but he's neglectful and likely a workaholic, similar to Edwin Murray, another shining example of good parenting. In the movies, we never see any child abuse depicted, however, it's all but confirmed. The second film features a flashback dream to the childhood of his daughter in the movie universe, Vanessa, where she's hiding from her knife-wielding father. Paired with the young girl's screams heard when Mike asks about her dad in the first movie, it's very clear that he abused Vanessa. He then uses her fear of him to manipulate her, and she serves as his accomplice in the first film. When she eventually does confront him, Afton, of course, tries to intimidate her. She reluctantly shoots him, and when she refuses to help him further, he chokes and stabs her. He does seem somewhat remorseful after this, which possibly hints that he does love his children to a certain degree. In the FNAF 2 movie dream sequence, he yells that he cares about Vanessa and that she's his favorite. I go back and forth on whether Afton loves his kids or not, and while I think he does somewhat, judging from his reaction to stabbing Vanessa, he ignores his injured daughter and runs off to kill Abby. Even if he says he cares about his children, Afton is very clearly an abusive father. In the games, his abuse is less clear, but we do see him manipulating his son, known as the Crying Child. In Five Nights at Freddy's 4, the boy's terrified of his brother Michael and Fredbear's family diner, which seems to be because of his father. Afton talks to his son through the Fredbear plushies, seemingly trying to drive a wedge between the brothers. What did he do this time? He locked you in your room again. He left without you. He knows that you hate it here. I'm not 100% sure if he's trying to split up the siblings, but he's definitely trying to make the Crying Child afraid of Fredbear's family diner. When Michael leaves him there, Afton says, "Hurry the other way and find someone who will help. You know what will happen if he catches you. You can find help if you get past them. You have to be strong." Clearly, he's attempting to make his son fear the diner and Fredbear. You know what will happen if he catches you, and telling him to find help is very obviously him trying to make Fredbear all scary. Why he doesn't want his son hanging around the diner, we'll discuss shortly. But it's clear that he's manipulating his son to stay away. Adding to this abuse is Midnight Motorist. During this minigame, we play as a yellow man. But despite that, we drive a purple car, which, in 5 Laps at Freddy's, has a yellow rabbit on it. The man also lives in a house in the woods, similar to the one from the FNAF 4 menu. It's not confirmed that this is Afton, but come on, it mostly adds up. Sure, he's yellow, but his car is still purple. Afton is likely yellow to help differentiate him from Michael, who is literally purple due to his body decaying. His purple skin caused some confusion with the fans, so depicting Afton as yellow here might have been to ease that confusion. Purple rambling aside, let's run off the theory that the mustard man is Afton. In this minigame, we see him yelling at his son, presumably the Crying Child, since Michael appears to be watching TV, like in Sister Location. Michael's dialogue also implies that this domestic dispute is a frequent occurrence, as he tells Afton to leave him alone tonight. William, of course, doesn't. He tries to get into the kid's room with increasingly aggressive dialogue before he decides to break in through the window. However, Afton finds it already smashed. He says that his son ran off to that place again, and he'll be sorry when he gets back. Knowing William, that's nothing good. I believe that place might be Fredbear's family diner. And after the Crying Child kept running off there, Afton made the Fredbear plushies to gaslight his son into staying away from the diner. Regardless, while nothing is outright said here, we can see some implications of abuse. Things are much more explicit in the night gameplay of Pizzeria Simulator, where Afton can murder his own son. The identity of the protagonist in this game is never confirmed, but it's pretty obviously Michael Afton, considering that Scrap Baby, Molten Freddy, and Afton all recognize him.
Together again! You should have known I'd find you.
You may not recognize me at first, but I assure you, it's still me.
Baby was his sister and encountered him in Sister Location. Molten Freddy wore his body back when he was entered, and Afton is, of course, Michael's father. So the fact that all of these characters seem to know the protagonist obviously points to them being Michael, which makes Afton's gleeful game over lines pretty disturbing.
That was easier than I thought it would be. Bittersweet, but fitting.
So not only is Afton fine with killing his son, but he seems to enjoy it. In the FNAF 2 movie, Michael's a pretty different character. Rather than being a protagonist, he's one of the main antagonists and is focused on carrying on his father's legacy. Undoubtedly because Afton has abused and molded Michael into his vision of an ideal child. One more thing I want to know, in the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, Dittophobia, we see William gaslight a boy named Rory, convincing him to stay in his underground experiment house by saying how much better this fake place is than the real world. You came here because you knew you'd be taken care of here. You have been taken care of here. Here, you're never an outcast. You're never wrong. You've been watched over and cared for. That was something your parents never did, Rory, remember? While Rory isn't Afton's son, he's still a good demonstration of how Afton manipulates children, whether they be ghosts, captives, or his own kids. Moving on to something less horrifying, an overlooked aspect of Afton's character is his fascination with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Obviously, he helped establish the pizzeria chain, and his murders were committed there. But in both the novel trilogy and the movies, Afton holds on to Freddy's even after it closes. In the books, he works as the security guard at the abandoned mall surrounding Freddy's, and goes under the alias Dave Miller. In the first movie, he has an even less believable fake name, that being Steve Raglan, and he works as a career counselor. He hires Mike as a guard for the pizzeria after learning that he's the brother of one of his victims. Then, in the film's finale, he dresses up as the Yellow Rabbit and tries to kill Mike at Freddy's. Similarly, in The Silver Eyes, he puts on the Yellow Rabbit costume and abducts Carlton, then he kills a cop there too. So it seems like William treats Freddy's as his hunting grounds long after it closes. Which, disturbingly enough, might be because he reminisces about his murders there. In the movie, he says the owner of Freddy's, which in that universe seems to be himself, won't tear the pizzeria down because he's a sentimental guy. I know I said this was less disturbing, but after recording all of this, yeah, that's pretty creepy, so let's focus on something else. A big part of Afton's drive seems to be his feelings for Henry, which are a very mixed bag. He admires him, genuinely impressed by his work in the Fourth Closet novel. My only real accomplishment was making something that could walk. No small accomplishment, although it's not happening as fluidly as you think. A lot of what you see is just in your head. That was Henry's idea, not to try to reinvent the wheel. Why try to create the illusion of life when your mind can do it for us? That being said, he also trashes his animatronics in the ending of The Twisted Ones. When Afton's murder robots successfully wade through a river, Springtrap says to Charlie, "Did you think my robots would be as poorly designed as your father's?" Afton walks a very thin line between being jealous of Henry and idolizing him. This is backed up by a police search of his house in the Silver Eyes, uncovering stacks of journals that are full of raving paranoia, passages about Henry that range from wild jealousy to near worship. In the Fourth Closet, we learn that Henry's grief over losing the real Charlie gave life to her Ella ragdoll. He viewed this doll haunted by his regret as his daughter, and he created Robot Charlies, in which the Ella doll was put inside, allowing her to grow up. The Charlie we follow throughout the novel trilogy is the third version of these Charlies, and Afton desperately wants to learn how Henry created her. However, he doesn't have any compliments for his old friend's achievement. Anyone can discover a fire already burning, but Henry found a unique spark, created something truly different, something he didn't deserve or intend to stumble upon. Saying that Henry didn't deserve this and calling his animatronics poorly designed shows that he thinks less of him. Likely because, as indicated by his dialogue in the Fourth Closet, deep down, he knows Henry is better than him. This might be diving into theory territory, but I'm pretty sure Afton murdered Charlie in the games because he was jealous that Henry had a more perfect family than he did. It's strongly implied that Charlie's murder occurred at a Freddy's location. In FNAF 2, we see that Freddy is present for her death, and the Ticket to Fun book notes that the wristbands seen on the day Charlie died were present at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Adding on to that, in Help Wanted 2, you have to type 1983 to obtain Charlie's memory, and that's also the same year that she died in the novels. So Charlie dying in 1983 at a Freddy's location would indicate that this was after the crying child's death. I think it's very likely that following his son's demise, William was jealous of how Henry had a perfect family, so he murdered his daughter to even things out. Moving on from murder, a more fun part of the fun one is that he's a very theatrical man. When Afton becomes Springtrap, he transforms into an incredibly over-the-top, dramatic supervillain. While in FNAF 3, he was a groaning zombie, all of the later books and games depict Springtrap as a theatrical rabbit. This updated characterization begins in The Twisted Ones, where upon Springtrap's introduction, he starts yapping about his identity. "I've accepted the new life that you gave me. You've made me one with my creation. My name is Springtrap. I'm more than Afton ever was and far more than Henry." Later in the Fourth Closet, he says, "When I called myself Springtrap, I was ecstatic with power, delirious over my newfound strength." We see this reflected in most of the later FNAF games too.
I always come back.
Got you! Ha 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 ha! I'm the fun one!
Now, this isn't to say that Afton wasn't always theatrical. In The Silver Eyes, he has a bouncy, graceful walk while wearing Spring Bonnie, along with a little dance. Movie Yellow Rabbit is pretty dramatic too. He struts around and monologues to Mike, even doing a scream knife wipe. Judging by how he beats the crap out of Mike in the film, it seems like the suit makes him feel powerful. Very important for a man who feels so neglected by the world. Along with that dramatic behavior, as I previously mentioned, he has a variety of aliases throughout the series. And in the fourth closet, he elaborates upon Dave Miller. Dave the Guard was a character, one concocted at a moment's notice to play you for a fool, you and your friends. It was insulting. It doesn't take a great thespian to pretend to be an idiot night guard, as long as you can get around inconspicuously. Headcanon time, but judging from Afton's acting as Dave Miller, Steve Raglan, and Springtrap, I honestly think he was a theater kid. Regardless, he's clearly got a knack for playing roles to fulfill his purpose, whether it be making himself appear strong, inconspicuous, or becoming a dramatic villain to embrace his new life. The final piece of Afton's character that I want to discuss is his end goal, which, as I'm sure we all know, is immortality. While I believe him murdering Charlie was driven by jealousy, his later crimes seem to be an attempt to figure out the secret to the supernatural so he can live forever. His funtime animatronics are, of course, secretly designed to abduct children, likely so Afton can conduct more experiments. This seems to lead to the discovery of Remnant, a molten metal haunted by ghosts, which can then be spread throughout various other objects, giving them all life. In Fazbear's Frights, Remnant is described as, in non-scientific terms, it's like the metal's haunted. It's more complicated than that, of course, but it's similar to the way that water conducts electricity. Remnant is the mixing of the tangible with the intangible, of memory with the present, the people and things that are lost, and makes them almost real again. In the games, Afton not only discovered Remnant, but also created the Scooper, which can inject Remnant and keep it heated, making it malleable but not too hot, as that neutralizes the Remnant's effects. It also seems like the Remnant in the Scooper and the Fun Times is from Afton's Freddy's victims. In FNAF 3, we see him dismantling the gang, and in the main gameplay, all of their endoskeletons are missing. In the books, he retrieved the classic animatronics endoskeletons and melted them together into a big old Remnant glob. So it's possible that in the games, he similarly did this. But I don't want to derail this video with theory talk. Check out our timeline if you're interested in learning more. But my point is that Afton has clearly been experimenting with Remnant to become immortal. His main goal in the fourth closet is to live forever, and as Dead by Daylight describes Remnant, in the right hands, it is the key to immortality. In Fazbear's Frights, an agony monster known as Eleanor also describes Remnant as power, life, eternal. Speaking of which, Afton might be driven to live forever because he fears going to hell. In the fourth closet, when Jessica tells him that's where he's going, he simply nods honestly and says, "In time, I'm sure that's where I will find myself, but the devil's knocked on my door before, and I've turned him away." In the Fazbear's Fright story, The Man in Room 1280, Afton is in a hospital following being burnt by Henry. And when someone mentions hell, all the monitors in his room start going crazy. So it appears that Afton not only believes in hell, but is very much afraid of it, which likely drives him to find a way to live forever. In Dittophobia, we also see Afton conducting a really weird experiment, that being the gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 4. It's revealed that the night segments of that game are actually an experiment connected to Circus Baby's entertainment rentals, as seen in Sister Location and Help Wanted. The nightmare animatronics are simply costumes hung on flimsy metal skeletons, which are wheeled around the house on tracks. Hallucinogens are pumped through the vents, which then make the subject inside the fake house see the nightmare animatronics. It also makes them think everything is normal. The whole experiment is designed to study the effects of ongoing fear in children by forcing a child to experience horrific nightmares with no real day life to bounce them out. It's not clear what exactly these experiments are for, likely something relating to Remnant or the effects of human emotion, but it further goes to show William Afton's mad scientist side. I know some people take issue with Afton doing experiments and trying to become immortal, but I think it's a neat addition to the story and helps give Afton an overarching goal. William attempting to recreate the supernatural and harness that power to become immortal is a very interesting plotline, even if it's only well executed in the books. I also think Remnant is more interesting than people give it credit for. Granted, if you haven't read the books, it probably makes zero sense, but having molten metal powered by ghosts and splitting up souls is a very cool concept, and I like how the fourth closet literally depicts the spirits as fragmented. As of now, that's all I have to say for Afton's character. I have always loved him as a villain, and making this video was a really cool way to glean a complete understanding of his character. He's an amazing antagonist for the series, but I really wish the games gave you a better understanding of his character. That being said, his depiction in the books and movies is phenomenal. Now that Afton is kinda sorta dead, we've sadly been seeing less of him and the effects of his crimes. As a Mimic fan, I can't quite complain with the endoskeleton appearing more instead, but I'm glad the movies are still giving us a good dose of Afton. I also really hope we see his Fazbear's Fright role adapted in more Megacat Studios games. I definitely think we'll see him in Fetch, as in the books, he was a hitchhiker on the robot dog. But back to the present, I hope this video served as a good understanding of Afton, and gave you a better appreciation for his legacy in the Five Nights at Freddy's series. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, and joining our monthly membership. It helps support us, and you'll receive a range of cool perks, including shouts on our videos, custom emojis, badges next to your name, exclusive previews of upcoming projects, and more. Special thanks to our current members Sean DeToy, Xori, Shadow Freddy Gamer YouTube, and Josiah the Great 2, and thanks to you for watching. Be sure to check out our other videos.